All right, John, tell me why we're test driving a police car.
Dave, you do not need a reason to test drive a police car. It's just fun and everybody gets out of your way. Really, the bottom line is we've never had an all-wheel drive in Tech Garage, so we're going to go through the whole all-wheel drive and do some service. This is a first, man.
Attention citizens, Tech Garage is on the way next.
Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Now, everybody's been clamoring for an all-wheel drive show. Do you know how hard it is to get an all-wheel drive car in Florida? Well, no worries. Our public service department hooked us up with this Taurus, and this Taurus is an all-wheel drive. What does that mean? Well, all the wheels drive. How does that work? Well, you got a differential right back here. The differential is actually transferring the power out to the rear wheels here, but if you follow the differential up, it's pretty cool. You got a drive shaft here, just like a rear-wheel drive car would have, and it goes up here to the power transfer unit. Now, my power transfer unit is in series with the actual Transaxle right here, which are driving the front wheels. I know it's hard to see here, but take a look at this graphic here. You can actually look at it. You got the engine where the power all starts, then it splines into the Transaxle. The Transaxle goes in series with that power transfer unit. We'll follow it down the drive shafts and the propeller shafts to the all-wheel drive coupling right to the rear differential. So that's what it's all about. Dave, you're all about all-wheel drives because you're from Ohio.
Yes, sir. We use it a lot up there. We have a lot of snow, a lot more than you have down here in Florida, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And I tell you what, the differential, it's in good shape. It hasn't reached its mileage yet, but the PTU and the Transaxle, that thing's needing some service, man. Handle it.
You got it. We'll get to it. We're going to do the PTU here in a little bit, but we're going to start with the Transaxle. And now, one simple plug here, holding everything in. All we have to do is drain it. And we've loosened it a little bit here. Let me continue along the way here. Want to make sure you catch all this. And one thing to note, first of all, you're going to need gloves because you're going to get a little bit of a bath. And there you go. That wasn't too bad. Yeah, you can actually already smell it. It's pretty burnt. It smells pretty raunchy there. So this is a sealed unit. There is no filter in here like you'd have with some other units. And all you have to do then is just drain the fluid and refill it. There are units, though, that do require filters. So we're going to throw it over to John, and he's got a couple of examples.
Well, Dave's right. You may have a Transaxle or transmission with the filter in it, maybe not in it, maybe it's just a drain and refill. But here's one that you can actually service. Check this out. Pull over the cover right here. This would be on the bottom. That's the actual pan. You can see the filter's located right here. Just pop it off, and there's your valve body underneath. Change it, you'll be good to go. Why do you want to change it? Well, check it out. This fluid here, it's burnt. You could smell it. It's nasty. The other one's brand new. It's going to wear out over time. You actually have clutches inside of there. You can see this is an old clutch. It's all wore out, and this is a brand new clutch. That's what holds your transmission in the gears. And make sure you use the manufacturer specified fluid. That's key. I think we covered it all, only if I had a Transaxle to show you.
Transaxle, I've been pushing this thing around for hours. It's a little bit different than yours, though. Right here on the front, we have our filter. If I swing this around real quick, I'll show you on the side. Here is our valve body.
All right, so you have a filter and a valve body. Either way, it's easy service. Well, stick around. We're going inside of a power transfer unit after break. You don't want to miss it. There's plenty more Tech Garage, brought to you by rockauto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com, is brought to you by Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. AP Laser, leading the way. And by rockauto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Well, welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Well, I promised you we're going to go inside of a PTU, power transfer unit. And I'll tell you, I cracked it open during break. It's not often you get to see me wearing gloves. I'll tell you what, I'm wearing them for a reason. You're going to find out why that service is so important. This thing is nasty. But before we do that, let's jump in and understand a little bit about a differential and how they actually work. How do we transfer that power? Well, you got a rear-wheel drive sitting right here, and think about it. The drive shaft's coming right here, and when the drive shaft comes in, it's driving this pinion. This is located inside the differential. Now, my pinion here actually drives this ring gear. So as it's spinning around, I'm spinning that ring gear, and I'm going around and around and around. Now, the only thing that's right in between there is fluid, so it's very important that you do a fluid service. Now, also, inside of this actual carrier unit here, you've heard of the gears, spider gears and side gears. Well, these are them. You have a side gear right here, and you have a spider that rolls right along in here. So it's important to service it. Why? Well, you can see right here. You can actually start chunking out gear pieces, not a good thing. Now, the moment we all been waiting for, the PTU, power takeoff unit right here, or power transfer unit. Take a look at this. I'm fixing to bust it open. Oh, man. Talk about a PTU. Man, this thing stinks. Not only does it stink, look at the goopity goop inside of that thing, man. That is just unbelievable. That's what happens when you don't service one. But this is cool because you can see right here, here's the actual pinion. Now, unlike that one, this pinion's actually driving the differential. So what's going on with the PTU here? Well, you can see it right here. Here's the input shaft. Now, the input shaft is splined to the transaxle, then it goes through an idler gear, and then it transfers power over to the ring gear, and the ring gear shoots it out to the rear. So not only are we driving the front, we're driving the rear as well. And you can see the fluid here. This is the fluid, which is bad, that doesn't look good, and we got the brand new fluid. Once again, use the manufacturer specified fluid. Matter of fact, that's what Dave's doing right now. Let's join him.
All right, now Ford has put the filler for the transaxle underneath the airbox. We've got the top of that already removed, and just a couple of bolts we were able to take the rest of it out along with the filter. And the fill cap is here, and it actually includes the dipstick, but we'll set that aside for now. Now, you check your manual to see what kind of fluid you need. Ford calls for the LV fluid, and your manual will also tell you how much you need. In this case, we need 4.5 quarts, so not quite a full jug here. So we'll get this going, and in the meantime, we will go to break. Oh, by the way, before you do this, you want to put the car in neutral. I forgot to mention that. Well, if you like to stop, or if your teeth chatter when you do, you're going to want to watch the next segment. It's all about those brakes. Next on Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com.
Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com. Well, it's Garage Ed time, and we're going to talk about rotors. But first, we got Dave. Dave, you look marvelous in that jacket.
Well, Professor, I believe the lab coat adds a few IQ points automatically.
No doubt about that. But Dave, you know, you're going to need those IQ points because we're going to put you to work. We're going to talk about rotors, but you got some practical applications.
Now, you got it, John. Any good brake job starts with a visual inspection. So I'm going to take this gauge and go check the lateral runout while you explain everything here on the table.
Absolutely. And that's going to be really cool. We'll check in with him a little bit later. We're going to actually put those power stop brakes to the test and see what happened. We put them on last season. But let's talk about rotors, man. There's all types of rotors. Let's just start with the basic. There's a hub rotor right here. Well, what do I mean when I say hub rotor? Well, you can see the bearings go right here and on the back side. So that hub is all built in or part of the rotor. Then you have what's called a hubless rotor. A hubless rotor is located right here, or I can take it right here. So what's going on? There's actually no hub right here. Where is it? Well, right on the spindle, built in. Either a gen bearing or a sealed bearing or whatever it may be, the hub's part of the spindle assembly. This then makes that a hubless rotor. Now, a couple other designs we can look at. On rotors, you have ventilated rotors. Well, in the center, there's ventilated. All the way back on show one, we talked about that heat dissipation. We have to get rid of the heat. That's the job of these vents right here, to let the heat dissipate from the rotor. You don't get the brake fade, you get good stopping power. Then there's the solid rotor. Now you'll see the solid rotor probably on smaller cars, lightweight cars. Doesn't dissipate the heat as well as the ventilated rotor, but we don't need all that on a smaller car. You still have a good stopping surface. Speaking of surfaces, they also come in different shapes and sizes as well. This one right here happens to be a slotted rotor. There's little slots in here. Once again, heat dissipation. Lets the material of the pads come out. It's just a little grooves for better heat dissipation. And Dave's actually over there working on a drilled and slotted rotor. You'll see that in a little while. It's got little holes in there drilled and slots as well. Even more heat dissipation. So with that said, there's a couple of measurements you have to make, okay? And these are the tech tips. You can do this. It doesn't make any difference. Professional shops do it every single day. The first thing I want to look at is this number right here. This is called the minimum thickness of the rotor, and this is huge. You can find this in a service manual, you can find this online, and sometimes like this one, you can find it stamped right on the rotor. Minimum thickness. This one happens to say 20.4. Well, obviously that's not 20 inches. That would be a pretty big rotor. This is in millimeters, so you would have to convert over to millimeters if you had a micrometer that was in standard like we do. But what you're going to do is you're going to go measure that rotor. That's first and foremost. I want to make sure that it's not going to fall below specifications. If it falls below specifications, trash it. Get rid of it. Forget about it. It's not going to transfer the heat. It's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. That's on there for a reason. That's the first one. Second measurement we want to do, Dave's going to show it to you in a little while. It's called lateral runout, and you can see it right here. That's where the rotor goes back and forth. It's a good illustration right there. It's just kind of on the car crooked, or it's actually warped laterally. Lateral runout causes disc thickness variation, DTV. Well, what's DTV? That's when the rotor goes in and out. You can see the second graphic right there. It's just in and out. Doesn't have to have lateral runout, but it can be in and out. Actually, lateral runout will cause this. So you take the micrometer and you go in 8 different places around the rotor as I spin the rotor around. And what you don't want is more than 5 10,000ths. That's not a lot. 5 10,000ths. That's a half of a thousandth in and out. Now get a load of this. If I'm going down the road 1 mile with lateral runout, it's hitting that pad 836 times in that same spot. In 6,000 miles, it actually hits it 5 million times in that one spot. If I'm beating that thing in that same spot for 5 million times, well, I'm going to cause it to go in and out. Now you hit the brakes, what happens? Boom, 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 pedal pulsation. All the way back up to the master cylinder, you feel it in the pedal. Everybody's felt that. The rotor's gotten smaller. How do you fix it? Put a new rotor on, make sure the inside's nice and clean, and use proper torque specifications on your bolts. That'll take care of it every time. So with those measurements, you should be able to take care of any brake job, but even more importantly, a visual inspection and lateral runout measurements are a must. Dave, show us how it's done.
Well, John, since we have the Challenger up here, first thing we want to do is a visual inspection. And you might as well do it since you have it up here on the lift. And it's super simple. You just want to look for the obvious. First, we're going to check the lines here. We have the line coming into the hose, make sure all the connections are good, and they are in this case. And you want to also look at your ABS sensor to make sure it's clipped in there, the cable is clipped in there. And again, you're looking for the obvious. You also want to grab your caliper here, and you want to see if it moves around and if it's free, because it has to float. And it does in this case. It's not going to move a whole lot, but at least it's not seized up. Also take a look at your sliders, make sure there's no debris in it, and again, that's going to be pretty obvious. You'll see it if something is wrong. The next thing we want to do is check the disc for minimum thickness. Now, it's usually stamped on the rotor itself, on the disc, or it might be in the manual if you don't find it there. And all you have to do to get to the disc itself is to take the caliper off. It's just a couple of bolts. You can slide it right off. In this case, to make it easier, we actually have another disc here we can show you. And you want to grab a brake caliper. Now, the brake caliper is a little different from other calipers because it has this point here that enables it to get into a groove to find the low spots. And you want to just throw the caliper on there, you run it around your brake disc, and if it falls below the minimum, you are in trouble. At that point, this thing is junk. There's nothing you can do to fix it, so you just want to throw that out. But let's say you're not below the minimum and this thing's still good. Now we're going to check for lateral runout, and that is the difference between the high spot and the low spot on the disc as it turns. If there's too much of it, that can lead to pedal pulsation. So we're going to check it out. We've got a dial indicator set on here. We've got it zeroed out, and we're going to start rotating it. Now you see it jump right there? That's when it hits one of these grooves. Don't worry about that. You just want to look for the overall change in the needle. So we start to look here. We're looking at thousandths. So right here we're at 4 thousandths, or up to 5 1,000ths. And you want to be between 3 and 5 at the most. So we're borderline right there. But as we drive this thing, we notice there's not any pedal pulsation at this point. So we're going to keep running with them. But if it starts to get worse, you start to feel it in the pedal, that's when you want to take it maybe to a shop. They can turn it for you. Or better yet, just go to rockauto.com, pick up a new disc. It'll probably be cheaper in the long run, and it's super easy to replace. There's not a whole lot to it. And that is everything you need to know about lateral runout. We've got a whole lot more coming up next, including the MT-TT.
Say what?
That's right, the Master Technician Tech Tip coming up right after this on Tech Garage, presented by rockauto.com.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Borla, the world's most winning exhaust. Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
All right, last bolt. Ah, look at that. Doggone plastic. Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. You know, the manufacturers are making these cars lighter, they're making them faster than ever, but with that comes plastics, you know, plastic intakes, dissimilar metals, all kinds of things going on, electrolysis. So that's why it's so important to torque your bolts and use proper torque sequences. Hence, this Master Technician Tech Tip. Hashtag MTTT, that's right, it's all about torquing. So what are we gonna do? Well, obviously we're gonna replace that part. This is the coolant outlet, and you know, you wouldn't think Rock Auto has a piece like that. Oh yes, they do. Now I'm gonna put it on here, and you seen me take it off with the air ratchet or the electric ratchet. You don't wanna do that, okay? That's fine for taking it off, that's great. But to put it back on, well, I'm gonna slow down a bit. I'm gonna get the bolts down, I'm gonna get them all started by hand, and then I'm gonna come back with the wrench, and I'm gonna tighten them up a little bit. Now I'm gonna bring this one down all the way finger tight, just to give you a demo. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a torque wrench. That's important. Now this torque, you can look at the specification, you can look this up on the internet sometimes. This torque happens to be 105 inch-pounds. Now follow the column up, that's right, I said inch-pounds. Little bolt like that's not gonna take 105 foot-pounds. We have an inch-pound torque wrench. If you don't, just take 12, multiply it, you're up to about 9 foot-pounds. Go ahead and put it to about 9 foot-pounds, but that's hugely important. Now, once I got it set up, I'm just gonna come down to the bolt, I'm gonna put it on there, and I'm gonna turn it until the torque wrench clicks. Now, once it does that, right there, then I'm good to go. I'll go back and I'll do all my bolts, but that's a good illustration of why to torque it. Now, you also may run into torque sequences. You see this intake manifold? This is made out of plastic. Once again, you have to follow a sequence. Take a look at this here. It starts from the middle, number 1, and work your way out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to the end. And then use the torque specifications. Once again, intake manifold, 105 foot-pounds, same thing. So I'm gonna take my torque wrench, and I'm gonna go around to each one of these and torque them, starting at the middle and working my way out. And there's another great tech tip for you. If you don't have a torque specifications and you're stuck and it has to be done, at least work your way from the middle out and loosen just the opposite, so you're not warping any of those parts. Now, one other thing I want to show you. Some of the manufacturers, they're actually showing torque angles, and that's weird, I know. Torque angles, yeah, they go with the torque bolts. They say perhaps, like we said, 105 inch-pounds or 27 foot-pounds, and then a certain degree. Well, if it's 45 degrees, that's pretty easy. Just take your torque wrench and go about 45 degrees. But most of them are maybe 27, 30, maybe even 80. I have a torque angle gauge right here. This is pretty cool because you can put it on the bolt. I'll just demo it for you. This is a 1/2 inch one, so I don't even have the wrench, but I just want to show you what we're doing. We're putting it on the bolt, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take the needle and zero it out. So now I'm pointing on 0. Then when I pull it, I'm actually going to take this and move it 10, 20, 30 to whatever angle it's at. Now that's putting that final stretch, that final torque on that bolt, that clamping force. That's going to make sure your engine's in tip-top shape. Now that tech tip is huge, and you want to use that anytime you're working on a car. Now these vehicles today, they're riddled with plastic pieces and dissimilar metals, so torque specifications and torque sequence are the key. I hope this tech tip helped you, but you know, some of these things you're gonna have pattern failures, they're gonna break. They're not all manufacturer items. RockAuto.com's got us covered. Let's check in with Tom and Dave.
Well, John, sometimes what may seem like a complicated problem might just have a simple solution. And Tom, on RockAuto.com, how do we know what people are replacing the most often on their cars?
Yeah, plastic parts can last for the life of the vehicle, or they can fail frequently on certain models. And to identify the parts that are problem prone on your vehicle, look for the darker font print. And then once you get into the list of parts, watch for the heart icon. That indicates a part that customers have bought most frequently and returned least frequently, so they've been most successful with.
Now here's an example of something that's super popular and something that can have some problems. If you have a Chrysler, this is the oil filter housing from the 3.6 liter V6, and you have to tighten it up here at the top, and if you put too much torque on this nut, you're going to end up with some cracks down here at the bottom, and over time that plastic degrades. You'll need to replace it. Also over here on this end, you have some sensors where the oil and antifreeze go in, and you can get some cracks around that area, then that could lead to a lot of problems as well.
Yeah, so something to think about with these. You pull out the filter
Yeah.
there, the cartridge style filters. There's a separate bypass valve, this little part right here, that if you have a traditional can oil filter, that's in there, you never knew about it, and you throw it away every time you replace the filter. What the bypass valve does is if the filter clogs up, it still lets oil circulate through the engine. And it's a good idea with these cartridge filters to replace the bypass valve separately, maybe not every oil change, but every once in a while, so it continues to work. If it's missing, then you're actually circulating dirty oil through your engine without having to go through the filter. So yeah, that's a nice little tip to know with these new cartridge filters, which are becoming very common on newer vehicles.
Whether you're replacing a broken part or assembly or just doing some routine maintenance like this oil filter, rockauto.com is the perfect place to go for everything you need.
Dave Dobson, report to the all-wheel drive, and please keep your hands where I can see them.
Here you go. John, I am just impressed that you're actually sitting in the front of a police car instead of the back for a change.
Hey, that's a first, but you know what? You killed it today, Dave, man. I took it on a test drive, rechecked the fluid. This thing's going to be in service for a long time.
I think we had a pretty good show.
Man, we had a great show. You know what? We're out of time for this week, folks, but check us out on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that cool stuff. We're all over the place, man. A show for the people. We'll be back next week with more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com. Tech Garage over and out.
Production assistance for Tech Garage is provided by Chipola College, located in Marianna, Florida. Founded in 1947, Chipola was ranked recently as one of the top 3 community colleges in the United States.